way that you are celebrating, but there is also celebration and reflection. So I liked that a lot, and Neera Chaudhary, of course, absolutely spoke from the heart, but mainly about what is close to her heart, which is the nutritional status and malnutrition. If I talk about what is close to my heart, I would say holistic development, of which survival is, of course, a very important step. And so I would like to actually start with just one issue to do with nutrition, since that was the previous presentation, that in early childhood, अभी जो संशोधन और रिसर्च हुआ है, उसमें ये एक इम्पोर्टेंट चीज़ निकली है कि जब ये न्यूट्रिशन सप्लीमेंटेशन करते हैं, न्यूट्रिशन की बात करते हैं, न्यूट्रिशन सप्लीमेंटेशन करते हैं, तो इसका जो इफ़ेक्ट है वो ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा कभी होता है, ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा होता है जब सिर्फ न्यूट्रिशन नहीं देते, लेकिन उसके साथ साथ ये जो मिस राजेश्वरी ने रिस्पॉन्सिव पेरेंटिंग की बात की, कि बच्चों के साथ क्या इंटरेक्शन होता है, उनके स्टिम्युलेशन या प्रेरणा जो उनके दिमाग को मिलती है, जब भी वो साथ साथ मिलता है न्यूट्रिशन और वो, तो उसका इफ़ेक्ट चाइल्ड डेवलपमेंट पे ज़्यादा है। और एक बहुत आश्चर्य की चीज़ है कि जो न्यूट्रिशन का इफ़ेक्ट हम देखते हैं, तो न्यूट्रिशन इटसेल्फ फिज़िकल जो डेवलपमेंट पे जब ये दोनों साथ में है तो फिज़िकल भी ज़्यादा होता है। सो आई जस्ट वांट यू टू कीप दैट पर्सपेक्टिव ऑल्सो इन माइंड। मेरा जो ब्रीफ मुझे मिस रेशमा अग्रवाल ने दी कि आप थोड़ा बहुत एक्चुअली 3 to 6 year old पे फोकस कीजिए आज, और क्योंकि और मैंने एजेंडा में देखा है कि जो कंसेप्शन टू 3, 0 to 3, बाद में 2-3 प्रेजेंटेशंस है जो नर्चरिंग केयर के बारे में, फर्स्ट 1000 days के बारे में, और 3 to 6 के भी जो होलिस्टिक के बारे में, ऐसे प्रेजेंटेशंस है। तो मैं आज आपसे क्या कहना चाहती हूँ कि जो अर्ली चाइल्डहुड एजुकेशन, मगर उसमें वो आप जो मेरे फर्स्ट स्लाइड में, टाइटल स्लाइड में देखते हैं कि वो केयर तो अगर एजुकेशन भी है, but that word care is very important. So it must always be thought of ECCE and not actually only ECE, क्योंकि 3 से 6 साल के बच्चों को भी जितना न्यूट्रिशन और हेल्थ और प्रोटेक्शन के बारे में उतना ही करना है जो 0 to 3 के साल के बच्चों को करना है। So I would like you to keep that in mind, that even when we talk of preschool education, पूर्व प्राथमिक शिक्षण, उसमें भी हेल्थ, न्यूट्रिशन, प्रोटेक्शन का भाग आना ही चाहिए। नेक्स्ट। ओके, ये बहुत इजी है मेरे लिए, क्योंकि पहले बहुत इसके बारे में बात मिस राजेश्वरी ने भी की है कि व्हाट is the rationale, why early childhood care. So the developing brain, that there is, it is the earliest years in which the pace of brain development is the highest in the first few years. और हमें क्यों, इस हमारे लिए क्यों, पूरी सोसाइटी के लिए, why is that important? Because it is the capacity for lifelong learning. Not only for preschool learning, okay, primary school learning, or higher education, but lifelong learning. Okay, so that is something to keep in mind. Equity, that we want, it improves to have inputs in early childhood care and development has the chances for all children to develop holistically and acquire school readiness, very important positive attitudes towards learning. And of course, in the Right to Education Act, in section 11, it has been put as desirable, but it has not yet been legislated. But I will come to that later when I talk about it. So one of my brief was to also appraise you कि ये जो field है ECD, ECCE के, उसमें अभी तक वो policy frameworks, policy environment क्या है, वो भी मैं थोड़ा बहुत करूँगी और फिर उसके बारे में कुछ problems क्या है. जैसे नीरजा चौधरी ने कहा, महाराष्ट्र में बहुत सी अच्छी चीज़ हुई है ये फील्ड में, और आप उसके बारे में सुनने वाले भी हैं बाद में ये दो दिन में. लेकिन जहाँ पे प्रॉब्लम्स है वो जर्नलिस्ट को ज़रूर उसके बारे में भी कुछ मालूमात होनी चाहिए. तो इसलिए मैंने बहुत पॉलिसीज़ और उसके कुछ जो प्रॉब्लम्स रहते हैं जिसमें हमें और भी काम करना है, वो भी मैं कोशिश करूँगी आपसे शेयर करने के लिए. अभी ये इकोनॉमिक वैल्यू ऑफ इंडियन, मिस राजेश्वरी प्रोड्यूस्ड द इंफॉर्मेशन कि $1 और $13 रिटर्न मिलता है. व्हाट डज दैट एक्चुअली मीन? वो इंडियन एविडेंस भी है, क्योंकि वर्ल्ड बैंक ने 2015 में जो इस्टेब्लिश किया था कि द रेट ऑफ रिटर्न एट 25 rupees to every rupee. But for what? Okay, it is incorporating early childhood development and in school education as well. Next. Now, I don't know if you heard of James Heckman, वो नोबेल प्राइज़ विनर है. जेम्स हेकमैन 2000 में उनको नोबेल प्राइज़ फॉर इकोनॉमिक्स उनको मिला था, और बहुत सारे और अवार्ड. वो यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ शिकागो में प्रोफेसर है. मैंने ये इधर इनकी बहुत सिंपल इसमें ग्राफ किया है. तो उसने ये रेट ऑफ रिटर्न की मतलब कि रेट ऑफ रिटर्न आप वर्टिकल में देखेंगे, इन्वेस्टमेंट इन ह्यूमन कैपिटल, जो हमारा पॉपुलेशन है उसकी जो प्रोडक्टिविटी है उसमें कहाँ इन्वेस्टमेंट करेंगे जिससे द बेस्ट रिजल्ट्स मिलते हैं. तो एज यू सी, इफ यू सी द एज 0 to 3, 4 to 5 is the highest level of the curve. स्कूल एजुकेशन में भी मिलेगा और फिर बाद में पोस्ट स्कूल of course there is, because there is of course lifelong learning, लेकिन जो highest है वो 0 to 3 और 4 to 5 में. और अपने जो even for government policies, ये ज़रा इकोनॉमिक वैल्यू पे भी हम भार देते हैं, तो it's not a bad idea, because that is very much understood, and particularly these days, economy. So, and workforce, human resource, etc., jobs, etc. So it is very important to understand this. It is in the earliest years that the investment bears the greatest advantage and result to our whole population. Yes, next. So this is just a little of the policy environment, सिर्फ आपके information के लिए. In 2013, there was a national, we had formulated with MWCD. Several experts were involved. Some of us are here today, and it has a very universal, holistic inputs: health, nutrition, early stimulation, protection, the whole gamut of holistic development. It's said a lot about public-private provision also, but ICDS, the Integrated Child Development Scheme, as the major player, with additional teacher recommended for Anganwadi. So if you want to take forward preschool education, the preschool ka jo ICDS mein, it was always been taken as the weakest section, and in 2013 at a policy level it was ratified that a second Anganwadi worker would be provided for specifically dedicated for early childhood education, pre-primary education. It also outlined capacity building requirements, regulation, institutional arrangements, etc., etc. And what is the curriculum framework and the quality standards. And from this curriculum framework, ECCE का call it syllabus, call it curriculum, क्या रहना चाहिए, उसमें क्या क्या सिखाना है वगैरह, उसका भी पूरा framework है. And many of the states then went ahead and formulated their curricula. Okay? But as I've said at the bottom, poor implementation of this policy, very, very unfortunate, because huge budget cuts came about after that. ICDS का तो लगभग I think 50% cut हुए, 52%. Okay, the states were supposed to put in a certain percentage. There was not enough states buy-in, and of course, no entitlements. The law did not provide up to then for any as an entitlement to children, as a right to children. Next. Then in Maharashtra, we tried with very much with UNICEF support and initiation, policies for Maharashtra, and it involved, UNICEF had involved professionals, government level, ground level functionaries, and across various districts. We did 4 or 5 workshops at the divisional level even, and we put together a policy with contextualized for Maharashtra, but in consonance with the national policy. Unfortunately, it did not get ratified by government. I wanted to mention this because it actually is a very, to our minds, a very good document, and it did not get ratified. Next. So now we have this, early this year, the Maharashtra ECCE policy brought out by the DWCD government of Maharashtra. Now, I have tried to get information as to who were the formulators. If I can tell you about the UNICEF initiated policy document, we know it's in the public domain who was involved, who did what, etc. We don't have information as to who formulated it, and neither has it been discussed at divisional levels, district levels before ratification, as far as we know. Okay? If anybody has other information, I would be happy to learn about it. It places ECCE, whereas the national policy said Education Ministry, MHRD or MWCD का convergence से ये सब हो सकता है. The Maharashtra ECCE policy is placing it with Department of Women and Child Development. One very good thing about it is that the vision, scope, objectives, at least in writing, mentions the entire span. Conception to 6 years, inseparable elements, care, health, nutrition, play, and early learning. But there's not enough emphasis on the 0 to 3 age group. And actually, as Ms. Rajesh said, the highest level of brain development is actually before the age of 3. before preschool education, though it continues, and this policy mentions the whole age group, but has not put enough emphasis on 0 to 3. Next. There are also several ambiguities and concerns. Okay? A lot of it is involved with the private sector regulation, registration, accreditation, etc. Online portals for teacher training, certification, etc., etc. And a lot of upon how Anganwadi workers will use digital resources, smart Anganwadi centers. Okay? Quality standards are not fleshed out. This third thing is very strange, and we don't know whether it's inadvertent that individuals can become ECCE teachers by studying online materials, passing an online test, and receive certification to teach. Now, in this whole area of education, there is training, there is observation of children, some interaction with children. Can you really just take an online test and get certification? Supposing you don't have any experience of even interacting with a child, or even have tried out certain methods, is there? But there is no mention of a blended concept either. कि थोड़ा बहुत online होगा क्योंकि we have such large numbers, but we will also have some face-to-face, you know. I don't find it in the, and I've checked with others who have studied this policy, we don't find it in the policy document. Okay? The role of the Anganwadi workers training centers is also a little unclear. I think people who know quite a lot about it would agree. And there is no state provision for a separate teacher for pre-primary education, even though the national policy had taken it into account. The UNICEF-initiated policy document had very much recommended that. In this, there is no such provision. Neither is there provision, state provision, for toys, materials, etc. Now, no clarity yet for implementation. I think, in a way, it's a good thing because they have to sort out a lot of things. How will it dovetail with this new education, Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, and you must have all known that there is now a draft national education policy. The draft has come out, and we've all been asked to give in our inputs for the finalization. So how this Maharashtra policy will dovetail with that is not clear, because the provisions sometimes contradict themselves. Next. So Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan is school education to include 2 years of preschool. That Anganwadi centers, wherever possible, will come into the premises of the school. Okay? Very much can be implemented through convergence between the two ministries, and also some lack of clarity related to some of the issues for training, because it says we'll use primary school teachers, लेकिन अभी उसका early childhood में training कभी होगा, कितना होगा, वगैरह वगैरह, it's a question mark. And that the ICDS services, अगर वो school premises में आए, तो फिर वो अलग-अलग जो lactating mothers, health, nutrition, etc., वो भी क्या सब चीज़ school premises में होगी, ये सब थोड़ा unclear है, and also classroom space, etc., for pre-primary education. Continue, yes, next. Now, what has put pressure on all this policy environment and is, of course, the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, and our country is a signatory to these global sustainable development goals, and so it has put some global pressure to put ECCE in the forefront. because SDG 4.2 states by 2030 ensure that all girls and boys have access to quality early childhood development care and pre-primary education so that they are ready for primary education. Okay. It clearly puts ECCE as a major goal up by 2030, universal access for ECCE. Next. So now we have the draft National Education Policy. Abhi in May, the draft was brought out. Very, very good news for all the ECCE community. Unprecedented positive step. The first chapter of Part 1 is devoted to ECCE. This is not come in any other national policy document except the ECCE policy 2030, but never in an education policy. Okay. Another very positive thing is there is a mention that there should be entitlements. It is a right, and these rights should be given to include 2 years of pre-primary to the RTE Act. Okay. So it states that it's estimated that the development of a strong ECC program is among the very best investments that India could make. India absolutely must invest in accessible and quality ECCE for all. And that is a statement at the beginning of the policy, which we all felt very happy about. There was also the highlight that explicitly recognizes that India is facing a deep learning crisis. वो तो आप लोग को भी थोड़ी बहुत तो मालूमात होगी कि अपने learning levels in our schools are very low in all subjects, and even basic literacy, numeracy is not achieved. So these shortfalls, they start in the earliest years. The policy recognizes this, and therefore it emphasizes the role of early childhood education in ensuring that children are school ready. So school ready then means preschool education of high quality, and it proposes another very good policy proposal. Okay, the age group 3 to 8 should be considered as for early childhood development. That up to the end of class 2, actually, the ways in which you teach, the ways in which children learn are still play-based, activity-based, and so on. And so we must consider this as a span, and not only 0 to 3, 3 to 6, 6 to 8, and so on. Okay? This is a very positive thing. It's called the foundational stage, and one whole chapter is devoted to it. Next. So now what are some of the problems, though, the gaps, as far as this high quality of ECE access? Again, there is no mention that there should be a separate ECE teacher. So how this one Anganwadi worker will take care of all the ICDS inputs of women and children, young children, as well as deliver high quality preschool education? It is, to my mind, an impossibility, and we must really crusade for a second Anganwadi worker if preschool is to be provided in the Anganwadis. Okay? There is inadequate emphasis on the 0 to 3 age group. Now, in the budget speech, there was really no mention of bringing RTE into, preschool into the RTE ambit, though the policy is proposing it, but there was no such mention. And also the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, which has replaced Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, because it is now taking from preschool to 12th standard. Okay? In that, the budget is unaltered for 2019-20, then there's doubts about inclusion of preschool education in primary schools because it needs a much bigger outlay. Okay? The infrastructure issues are there for preschool, and as for urban ICDS, it requires a whole different section actually in the policy, because urban Anganwadi centers have huge challenges and there is not enough government provision for any other preschool education. Okay? And what all of us in the technical expertise have been saying, that it is high time that we professionalize ECCD cadres, but there is not enough in the policy about professionalization of ECCD cadres. Yes, continue. Okay. So this is just giving you a glance. This table can be made available to you later, that at present what is the participation in preschool education. And as you see, it is actually really very, very across. If you look, okay, there is not more, I mean between 30–40%. Privately run institutions, of course, in the urban, it is 50% in the urban. Obviously, in ST, it would be far less. And not attending is very important. Again, across, definitely up to 30% do not yet have access to pre-primary education. Next. Now, there's been a recent study done by 3 organizations, very highly reputed. One of them is, of course, UNICEF, is a partner to this study. Then CSED, which is Center for Early Childhood Education and Development. It is in Ambedkar University in Delhi. And ASAR, I know you must all be familiar with, that they do these annual studies of what are the learning levels of our children throughout the country. So these 3 organizations in partnership, this study was done, Indian Early Childhood Education Impact Study. Just 2 years ago, the report came out, and here are some of the findings. With exceptions, Anganwadis generally act as a place where children come primarily to collect their midday meal and spend some time when parents are away at work. There is generally no planned ECE activities. So if we are going to place pre-primary in Anganwadis as well as some in primary schools, how are we going to do this without at least a teacher? So this is a big question. And as I say, many good things are happening. And that's why this sentence begins with some exceptions. There are always exceptions. But I think this community of journalists actually, by all means, you tell the positive stories, because we need that optimism as well. But we need to publicize what are the problems and what government needs to do. Another thing said, from multitask Anganwadis to demand-driven private schools, the quality of preschool education is not developmentally appropriate. In private schools, it's mainly workbooks, many of them, pencil pushing, some coloring, not all the different developmental aspects with the young child needs. Okay? And school readiness levels are very low across states. These are actual quotations from the study. And it is, I would say, a recent and a very prominent study. And a book has now been brought out based on this study also, which I urge all of you to get the report as well as the book if possible. Next. Now in financing, see, generally the Haq Center for Child Rights, also the Center for Budget and Governance Accountability, that the allocation is simply not enough. If you're talking of high quality, the target set after the Supreme Court had said that there must be universalization of ICDS, the target set has not changed. 14 lakh Anganwadis across the country. But where the budget for Anganwadi services has increased, and I'm sure roughly, it simply does not cover, say, this universal access, the high number of vacant posts in the Anganwadi services, the promised increase in the salaries of Anganwadi workers and helpers. Okay, so the unions are also agitating quite a lot now because these were promises made. Okay, and the construction of Pakka government-owned buildings. Actually, 2/3 are not in Pakka government buildings, and there is just, Kacha center. So when we talk of now we're going to have high quality preschool, then all this has to be taken into account. Next. I thought I would end by, as journalists, I don't know how many of you have visited preschool centers, pre-primary schools, and so on. So I think एक थोड़ा दृश्य होना चाहिए दिमाग में कि ये चीज़ क्या है, क्या होनी चाहिए, और इसका करिकुलम क्या है, और वो हम अगर जाएंगे ऐसे सेंटर में तो हमें अगर हाई क्वालिटी कहते हैं तो हम क्या देखना चाहते हैं. So I'm ending with that. Let's see. What are the key areas? अभी ये सब लोग कहते हैं developmentally appropriate. Okay? तो हमें ये ऐसे करिकुलम चाहिए, अभ्यासक्रम, और प्ले बेस्ड पेडागोजी से ये सब चीज़ें ये प्रोग्राम में होनी चाहिए. फिजिकल डेवलपमेंट, हेल्थ केयर, हाइजीन, कॉग्निटिव डेवलपमेंट जैसे मानसिक या बौद्धिक विकास, जिसमें अलग अलग कॉन्सेप्ट, स्किल्स वगैरह आने चाहिए. लैंग्वेज डेवलपमेंट, बोथ रिसेप्टिव एंड एक्सप्रेसिव, यानी हम कितना समझ सकते हैं जब दूसरे बोलते हैं, और हम खुद एक्सप्रेस कर सकते हैं अच्छी तरह से. इनिशियली इन होम लैंग्वेज विथ ट्रांजिशन टू द डोमिनेंट रीजनल लैंग्वेज, क्योंकि मीडियम ऑफ इंस्ट्रक्शन प्राइमरी स्कूल्स में तो डोमिनेंट रीजनल लैंग्वेजेस में ही होना चाहिए, लेकिन शुरुआत होम लैंग्वेज से होनी चाहिए. देन दिस इमर्जेंट एंड अर्ली लिटरेसी, उसमें क्या क्या स्किल्स हैं वगैरह, थोड़ा बहुत इंट्रोडक्शन. तो इसमें साक्षरता ऐसा कुछ नाम नहीं लिया है, वाचन लेखन ऐसा भी नाम नहीं लिया है. इमर्जेंट लिटरेसी, अर्ली लिटरेसी, जिसमें उसके लिए साक्षरता के लिए रेडीनेस, एक पूर्व तैयारी करनी है. नेक्स्ट, जैसे मैथमेटिक्स में भी एक पूर्व तैयारी के कॉन्सेप्ट्स क्या है और उसके कौशल क्या है, उसके वोकैब्युलरी क्या है, वो मैथमेटिकल भाषा छोटे बच्चों को कैसे एक इंट्रोडक्शन देंगे. क्रिएटिव एक्सप्रेशन you should be able to see in the Anganwadis and pre-mind, and social and emotional development. और social and emotional development में self concept, हमारे बच्चों के self confidence, कभी कभी हम खुद अगर देखेंगे हम क्या क्या adulthood में कर सकते हैं, नहीं कर सकते हैं, बहुत से चीज़ें confidence पे आधारित है. मैं भी आज आई हूँ, मैं बैक प्रॉब्लम है, वो थोड़ी बहुत कॉन्फिडेंस होगी तो अच्छा है, फिर भी कर सकते हैं. ऐसे कॉन्फिडेंस अर्ली चाइल्डहुड में पैदा होती है, और ये सोशल इमोशनल डेवलपमेंट के लिए है। और एक चीज़ जो हमारे इसमें इतनी नहीं आती है, हमारे जो स्टेट फॉर्मुलेशंस में, जो हमारा सेंटर है, सेंटर फॉर लर्निंग रिसोर्सेज ने उसके ऊपर बहुत भार दिया है, रिस्पेक्ट फॉर डाइवर्सिटी। रिस्पेक्ट फॉर डाइवर्सिटी छोटेपन में से कि हम अलग कम्युनिटीज़ के हैं, हम अलग रिलीजन्स के हैं, हम अलग अलग, हमारी स्थिति, सोशल इकोनॉमिक स्थिति अलग अलग है, और हमें ये रिस्पेक्ट जो पैदा करना है, स्पेशली नाउ इतनी कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स हो रही है, तो ये छोटेपन में हमें ये डाइवर्सिटी का आदर, रिस्पेक्ट पैदा करना। सो दिस इज़ द करिकुलम। अभी हम जाएंगे सेंटर में, तो हमको क्या देखना है? सो लेट्स जस्ट सी, just go back one. So this is a snapshot of any balwadi, anganwadi, preschool, pre-primary class, okay? A place where children learn effectively because their physical needs are met and they feel wanted, secure, happy in a warm classroom climate. That emotional thing is the most important. Unless children have that, they're not going to learn. Children learn effectively as the physical environment is conducive to learn. Very cramped space, not enough ventilation, etc., etc. This affects their learning. Okay? Children learn effectively as the curriculum is based on their developmental needs and interests and is culturally relevant. So when we say culturally relevant, we should take a much more broader thing about culture, not some particular caste or some particular tribal group or some particular, but let's think of our national cultural relevance as well, our secular traditions as well. Okay. Children learn effectively, children develop positive self-concepts, self-regulation and social skills. Next. Children have opportunities to communicate, express themselves freely, have sensory experiences, observe, question, solve problems and create. Children learn through interaction with teachers and with other children. Not just sitting and listening to that teacher authoritative, ye karo, wo karo, abhi open your books, close your books, and there's a lot of interaction and conversation going on. Children learn through playful activities, handle materials, try things out for themselves, and develop a positive disposition towards learning. And of course, also important, children acquire the concepts and skills that prepare them for primary school. Because this is where our learning levels, if they are to improve, this is where the beginning is, school readiness. Okay. So I leave you with this drishya of a preschool classroom, a balwadi and anganwadi.
For every child,